Welcome back to the Abundant Harvest Homestead. I'm Papa Pepper. I just got back from a trip where I made probably what's going to be the most expensive addition to my garden this year. And I may also have this be a recurring one, where possibly 2 or 3 times over the course of the next week or so, I may spend this much money on my garden. For me, part of trying to live a more self-sufficient lifestyle is to drop the cost of living. If I drop the cost of living, I believe I can increase the quality of life because less of my time needs to be exchanged for money. If I take my time and my labor and my effort and exchange it for money, the second I do that, I get taxed on it, which takes a portion of it. And then I also have less time left for the rest of my life. My life, as I've mentioned before, isn't defined by what I do, but who I am, and that's who I am to God, who I am to my wife, and who I am to my children before it heads out of that realm. So as a godly husband and father, I'm going to focus on that. I want to have as much time as I can to focus on that so that I can succeed in my real goals in life, which fall into those categories. So to have expenses, even on something like growing my own food, is not ideal for me because that's more money I have to spend on something that I was kind of whittling out of my expenses. The more food I grow, the less money I need to spend on food, so therefore the less money I need to earn to buy this food. Which is why we propagate a lot of plants, which is why we save a lot of our own seeds. So as somebody who is saving a good portion of our own seeds and just kind of printing new ones every year, more than enough for us, more than enough for others, and then also with propagating food-bearing plants, you may wonder, well, where exactly is this expense coming in? And even if you look out into my garden, you will see in a lot of ways there is an insane amount of rocks in my garden. That's something that people normally do not want in their garden, but as you can see, mine are not used in companion with the soil. They're extracted from the soil, and then I build my own raised beds out of them. And heading through here, I don't know, there's tons, literally tons, like, you know, thousands of pounds worth of rocks in my garden. But in doing so, a couple things happen. Number one, I have these nice manicured, mulched paths between them. That is a blessing because I get that for free when they have free wood mulch in the nearest city where I go and drop off my recycling. So if I take recycling in, I bring the trailer with me and then bring the wood mulch back. But over time, that wood mulch breaks down and does make a nice soil that then I add to these garden beds. But as I continue with building up these garden beds, I've got to redo some things with my compost to be generating more of that. And then if we're feeding the rabbits any sort of grasses or hay or Timothy grass or things like that that has seeds in it, then we got to compost the rabbit manure rather than adding it directly. So I want some of these to be bigger and deeper than they are, but I don't have a lot of resources that are necessarily always free to do that, which is where my expense comes in this time. And even here's a great example. There was some sorghum growing in between here with some sunflowers last year. I cut them down, the roots can decompose in there and all that, and then up the 2 fences here is where tomatoes were growing last year. So I cut them off too, but then this leaf litter blows in, all these other things. That's all good organic material that's going to break down and make a richer soil. Just the other day, I was planting some of my sweet potato slips up this edge. And I want to add something to this that kind of tucks in all this debris and helps it break down and become some nice nutrient-rich soil for the rest of, you know, my plants that I'm planting in there. Even the old plants from last year are going to be breaking down and doing that. So I actually went and got a mixed load of topsoil and compost. It was about just over 20 bucks a scoop, so I paid $43 for this load. I've shown you before I have like a 6x8 trailer, maybe a 6x5. So I'll use a 6-foot picket in the front, and I'll use some 8-footers on the side to kind of build extra sidewalls real quick, real easy, just throw them in. And then I put a tarp too, because when I'm spending money on an investment like this, I don't want it all just falling through the cracks and coming home with like half a load. So right now I'm gonna add some things to the garden. Where I have plants planted, I'm just gonna add around. In other ones, I'm going to give them a good weeding and then add this, you know, on top of there, and then be planting in this. I've held off with some of my spring planting because I wanted to do this first, and I finally checked into a place. I got the rest of the compost that they had and then mixed it in with some topsoil, so I'm gonna check in with them over the next couple of days, see when they actually get more compost. And the cool thing too is the place that I do get the wood mulch, periodically they have free compost there as well. So that's another opportunity that at some point this spring or summer I expect to occur. And with these raised beds too, you can see behind me, over by the beehives, there's a number of layers of rocks there. That's kind of a hugel mound style raised bed. Other ones don't really have as deep of ones, but over time I can add more and more layers and make them deeper and deeper. You'll see these are starting to get deeper on the wall, but I still want to throw some stuff in the middle of there to kind of tuck these guys in. So that's where I'm at today. I'll give you a look at a couple of the beds I'm working on, and then we'll move forward from there. This garden bed here is a good example. This is where we grow our Malabar spinach. Some of this debris down here is Malabar spinach. Yeah, the seeds, the stems, whatever was left over. And then here's a bunch of rabbit manure added. This has reseeded itself for many years, and I haven't had to plant it ever again. It grows back on its own. So I'm just gonna add a nice layer where all these leaves that got blown in, this rabbit manure, other stuff can be tucked in, and that's gonna help build up the soil too. Another one is over here where I have these thornless blackberries. They grow from about here to here, but then they overarch this area and move off to each side as well. I think it's going to make a really nice green wall presentation with some nice archways to walk through for people entering the garden, especially as some of this other stuff fills in. But again, you've got trees around here, and you can see looking all around my garden, there's plenty of trees, and the leaves from those blow in here, and then when you have these plants growing up or a fence line, like this cattle panel here, it stops the leaves. So I'm gonna tuck them in so they can be decomposing and helping to build my soil. This here is some of the stuff that was remulched, and you can see there is some weeds here, but there's also clary sage, which volunteered, and then this stinging nettle is gonna have to be removed. That's one reason I wanted extra mulch as well, extra compost, extra stuff to grow in. I want to be able to lift these stinging nettles out of here and pot them up to relocate them. And if you look here too, all of this is morning glory vines. These guys are all going to have to get weeded and then tucked in again, and hopefully every year I do this, but they're well established so they keep growing back from the root. So I'll be removing stinging nettle, potting that up, pulling back all of these, I consider them more invasive little morning glories. There's one starting up that panel already. Potentially potting up some of these clary sages, which turned a huge bush. You know, this is my walkway here. But when I was redoing the walkway up to this point and putting the mulch in, I was taking out the old wood mulch and throwing it up here. And you can see this actually made a pretty nice soil. As it breaks down over time. So I may top dress this too. I'm not sure. I should have already planted peas on here for the year, but I haven't. I should have also planted peas along there. I haven't. That needs to be weeded and top dressed as well. And then I'm actually doing a pretty interesting experiment this year with the Jerusalem artichokes, the sunchokes. I got to pull some stuff out of here. I'm going to top dress them a bit, and I'll get onto that in a future video. Hey Dodge, how you doing, buddy? When you shear these creatures, wow, their bodies sure look a lot smaller, and their head then looks just ridiculous as far as how much growth is on there. How you doing, buddy? That's what I thought. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Also in areas like this where I have all these perennial Egyptian walking onions, look at how beautiful and thick those are coming through there. I mean, and these are not, you know, little by any means, they're impressive. But I'm gonna kind of fill this in, and then these strawberry plants are flowering hard right now. Looks like they're gonna be making some strawberries here in a minute, but I can actually add around that whole thing too and top dress this, add a little more extra depth to this. These guys will be growing fine. They'll grow up and through it, but all that extra leaf litter and stuff will be tucked in as well. I think last year I also threw some ash from the fireplace, and some of these, if I would have gotten earlier in the year, it would have been much easier to add the soil. I still may, it just may take more work to kind of make sure the plants are still popping out of it. But those are a couple of my main areas I'm going to be working on today, and then also saving a good portion of that in pots as well. And then the pots will be, of course, for different plant propagation and also more seedling starting. Here I've got a number of cherry bushes, thornless raspberries, propagated elderberry and figs, clary sage, lemon balm, just a variety of things that, you know, I'd rather propagate them and have more, and then have more food as I continue to develop this land, than just get rid of them and or let them get overgrown in any one certain area. So that's what I'm working on. Same thing here. I got to make this deeper, and if I may just even scatter pea seeds on top of there right now, and then add about 2 inches of soil. So I think I'm going to grab my peas, and in a situation like here or some other ones, add those peas first and then cover them in soil, and then I don't have to individually plant them. I can just sprinkle them on the ground at a reasonable amount of spacing out. So got to think on the go. That's what I'm going to work on first. Over the years, I've tried a number of different peas on this property. The first thing with relocating several growing zones away, moving 750 miles pretty much south from where I was born and raised and gardened very little, was just to kind of test some of the parameters of this growing zone. I planted a number of different seeds for peas the other year, grew a number of different kinds, noted those which did well, and then let a lot of them go to seed to give me a supply. These are some of my favorite ones because these are going to be an edible pod pea. I find that to shell a whole bunch of peas isn't really something that fits in well to my lifestyle. Even with a decent sized family and willing helpers, to sit there and really shell that many peas, I'd rather be able to pick it once and eat the whole thing after rinsing it off than having to shell a whole bunch. So we like a good pod pea that you can eat the whole thing of, rather than like an English garden pea. I do have some purple king tut peas growing elsewhere, but these ones are the ones that have worked out really well for us. So I'm just going to sprinkle these along some of these fence lines and then cover them with this topsoil and compost mix and just tuck them in that way. Ideally, I would have planted these quite some time ago, but I believe I can still get a good harvest out of them this year yet with planting them now, and then I'll just wait probably 2 or 3 weeks before I plant the other plants in the same spot. What I like to do is let peas grow up on about every fence line and trellis that I have, provide me a harvest, and while they're growing, plant my next ones. As the peas die out and give us the harvest, the next ones are coming up, and then the peas kind of die out of their way, and the next crop, whether it be snake gourds or Chinese red noodle beans or tomatoes or whatever I'm growing up a fence line or trellis, I'll have a chance to overtake that area, and then I get 2 harvests, you know, out of that same area. And then I could potentially plant these again in the fall and get another harvest, you know, off the same structure. A lot of stuff here, rebar, cattle panels, T-posts, wire. It's there for a reason, and the more I can use it, the better it is for me, and then the better return on my investment of time, energy, and money to buy those things I get. So it just makes sense to me. Where I planted here, where these leaves are, you can barely even see some of the peas, but over here in my Malabar spinach area, it's a little easier to see, and I perhaps went a little bit of heavy, but these guys got a lot of room to grow up here to the point they're like 7 feet up. Some peas will grow that big, but even here, the Malabar spinach isn't actually a spinach, it's a spinach substitute. It's a tropical plant that'll just thrive in the heat as long as it has enough moisture, and it'll cover this thing on its own. However, when it starts off very slow. So by planting these peas here, they'll have plenty of time to get up, do their thing, and then that slow growing Malabar spinach will, you know, start, and then it'll take time to get up here, but eventually it'll be a thick wall of greens that for years now we haven't even been able to completely keep up with because there was just so much of it. But no matter how much we picked, there was always more. And I love a plant like that, especially one that volunteers that I don't have to plant. It just shows up and rocks out every year, provides an incredible harvest for us. Love stuff like that. So we scooped up some mixed topsoil and compost. A lot of compost is here. A lot of topsoil's down in here, so I like to mix it together really good. Make sure it's loose because I'm going to want things growing through it. I don't want a big old chunk. That's not going to help my peas. Get that mixture in here and then just sprinkle it on top and pat it down. A lot of times people say things like peas should be maybe about 2 inches in the dirt or in the soil. So at this point, I don't need to force them down there. They're already there. I just tuck them in about that deep, and then I'll give them a good watering too. Cool thing too is I continue to build up my raised beds. Everything I've added to these beds, whether it's rabbit manure, my own compost, my own topsoil, the decomposing wood chips that used to be in the pathways, I put a lot of fish emulsion or stinging nettle tea or comfrey tea in there as well, maybe a rabbit manure tea. All that stuff gets down into the ground, some of it stays into the soil, and then by adding stuff on top of it, everything I've already put in there that hasn't, you know, washed away or leached down into the ground is still there and available for the plants. So I'm just adding more of a growing medium on top of there that over time will hopefully be richer and richer as we continue to amend the soil, build it up, and work with it. So I really want this place to be as productive as possible, and having a good healthy soil is where that starts. We're not just growing plants, we're growing soil. And I want to have a good depth to it too. The clay underneath there does have a lot of good nutrients in it, minerals in it, things that the plants can use, but it's a very hard growing medium, so I want as much stuff as I can above there. Even when I plant horseradish, sometimes that'll grow some very deep roots, but a lot of times here they just run right under the mulch along the layer of clay rather than kind of digging deeper. Makes it easier to harvest on my end, but getting that one and got this one. Still got to water it, but we do have rain in the forecast, so we'll see if I have to invest that time and energy or if things just get taken care of. But the girls have a project I got to supervise them on real quick. All right, daughter, what's going on?
We are taking these 3 chicks up to our neighbors.
So they needed some more laying hens, right?
Yes.
And you guys said, well, we were hatching some out, and you offered to give her some, huh?
Yes, sir. So I hope these are all hens. These are a mix between the whiting true blue olive eggers, and they could be some speckled Sussex in them also.
Cool. And you're taking the horse too?
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are some beautiful birds though, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at that.
That's cool. You think she's gonna like them?
Yeah. So.
And if one of you wants to ride up,
I do.
I'm okay with that. we'll just watch for traffic. I'll be with you guys. Kids are putting a lot of effort into this pony. Thankfully, she's a very friendly pony. The price was right, and that we got her for free. And the main goal was just that she would have somewhere better to live. She was pretty much just running around in a pasture with some cattle. She didn't get a whole lot of human interaction, and she used to be, you know, when a girl was young, she was hers, but then the girl kind of grew up, moved away, and now she just kind of ran with the cattle. So they've been spending a lot of time making friends and grooming and washing and brushing, and Pinky's been playing with the mane and the tail a bit, and then also just riding her, teaching her how to go. So it looks like Pinky's gonna carry these ones for us, and Red Pepper's gonna ride on the way up. Are you ready?
Yes!
So now that I'm back, it's starting to rain, which means I've got to crank some of this into overdrive, or I'm going to have a muddy, muddy trailer. So hopefully I've got time to get this thing unloaded. We'll see. Well, howdy, honey.
Hey, darling.
Heading to the garden, trying to beat the rain. It's drizzling pretty good right now.
Thank you for watching. Hit the like button.